Welcome everyone. We are very happy to have with us today our speaker from Luxembourg, Jean Sapcariu, who's worked quite a lot with narrative CVs, who has been part of the Luxembourg funder of the FNR, who has introduced narrative CVs in their project reviews and in their proposals. They had quite a lot of accompanying research and really looked into how this changed the situation. And so I'm really happy that we're going to see lots of insights today, what this means for the researcher, particularly for us as early career researchers, and how we can make this to the best use also for us. So very welcome, Sean. Happy to have you here on the webinar, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sebastian, and thank you for the invitation. It's always it's always fun to talk and discuss. And I think I mean, I've designed not the full hour, just probably 20 to 30 minutes of talking because it's maybe interesting some of the stuff that I'm saying, but it's probably more interesting the discussion and the questions you have, and because this is change, and change is sometimes scary. So let's have a conversation and let's keep the conversation going. I have a bit of a frog in my throat, so I apologize for my how I sound, but let's go for it and see what happens. So if you give me a minute, I will share my screen here. Suck, and then okay, and then the settings. Cool. I imagine everyone can see my slides. Yeah, okay, nodding from the audience. Good. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about narrative CVs and what that means and all the stuff around it. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat if you want later, or hold them till the end, and you can then unmute yourself in video and we can have a discussion. Okay, so starting at the beginning or at the high level, the whole goal of this is focused around something called research culture. So if you've never heard of research culture before, it's been gaining a bit of momentum and discussion and as a buzzword in the last couple of years. And the idea of it is that it covers kind of everything that happens in research, right? So it's all the things around research, and it influences how research is done, how it's evaluated, how it's communicated, how we do things in this ecosystem. And the term was coined back in 2016 by the Royal Society in the UK, and I really like this picture because it shows how like kind of complex and everything is connected, and it's nice. But culture, in all senses, not just research culture, but all cultures are underpinned by values. And so recently, well, 2 years ago, I think, Science Europe, so a group of funders and research performers in Europe, developed a values framework. So kind of 6 overarching values that theoretically we could all agree upon as the type of research culture that we want to see, right? So a culture that promotes autonomy and freedom of research and researchers, care and collegiality, that we take care of each other, collaboration, equality, diversity, and inclusion, integrity and ethics, and openness and transparency. So if you go to the page below, or if you just do a search, I'll make slides. I don't know if you could share slides later, but I'm happy to share these slides. You can see in a little bit more detail of what this means. And everything that we do, all the stuff that happens is derived from these values. And then going a bit deeper, back in 2020, the Wellcome Trust published a really nice study on what people think about research culture that they're working in. And this was all over Europe, and well, all over the world, kind of. You can see there's over 4,000 respondents. And they asked many questions. It's a very interesting, in-depth report, but the one I want to focus on here is, who's responsible? Who has to change things, right? Because maybe there's lots of issues that we are all aware of that I don't need to go into right now, but who's responsible for changing? And they, according to researchers, you and others, it's the institutions and it's the funders. So I represent a funder, not an institution. So it's up to us to say, okay, we take on this responsibility and let's do something about it. Let's make culture a bit better, aligning with these values that I showed towards a more innovative and diverse and inclusive research culture. Things are moving, which is cool. I haven't shown this slide before. I added it for this one to show that there's actually a lot of stuff happening in research culture, right? So you have the European Commission, which is really integrating the concept of research careers in their new charter for researchers, which is coming. And there's a lot of discussion and wording in there around a broader range of careers and broader range of recognition and rewards, and it's really nice. You have initiatives like COARA and DORA. DORA, the Declaration on Research Assessment, which has been around for a long time. The idea of really understanding a broader range of accomplishments of a researcher and focusing on the research itself more than impact factors, metrics like that. And COARA, a coalition on advancing research assessment, which has over 500 institutions from around the world, a mix of researchers, funders and institutions, and others, mostly institutions, with a set of commitments that say, we commit to reducing our reliance on metrics and to having a broader, more qualitative evaluation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's cool. 500 people in the course of a couple of years, which is impressive. Or not people, institutions, maybe more people. And then the REF, the Research Evaluation Framework in the UK, which is a massive undertaking of the UK government and the UKRI, where it's kind of how research funding is distributed over the 5 or 6 year periods. And in the new REF that will be coming in 2028, after a big, long discussion and study, you see 25% of the REF will be based upon people, culture, and environment. So research culture is now becoming, a part of what determines what funding goes to research institutions. So people are taking their responsibility on board, and culture is starting to change, which is good. The momentum is there. We're talking about narrative CVs today, so that's one piece of the puzzle. And you can see here that there's actually a fair amount of funders. So I haven't even covered institutions here, but funders are starting to adopt narrative CV or narrative style CVs or CVs with narrative elements to kind of foster this broader recognition and rewarding of the achievements and output and accomplishments of researchers. So you have funders from mostly Europe. You have the one on the right, the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment is New Zealand. You have the ERC having added some aspects to narrative style CVs to their templates this year. So I mean, it's the ball is rolling, which is really cool because this slide did not look like that a couple of years ago. Okay, so let's dig into what a CV is and why we need it. When you evaluate a research proposal, at least us at the FNR, we get an application, a proposal, and we get a CV. And the two are related because for us, the application is what's important. That says what you want to do. And the CV provides context, right? Are you are you or your team the best group of people or the best people for this job or what you propose? But it's that word context which is very, very important. So it's not like shouldn't be given a funding decision based upon do you have an Nature paper or what's your H index, right? The idea is that the CV should provide context because it's the science that we want to push for, the research, and it's not necessarily the person's accomplishments that should be valued higher than what they want to do, at least in our opinion. So why don't we want to use a traditional CV? Metrics, right? So there's too much focus on indicators that don't necessarily equate with quality. There's a lot of quantitative information, which usually leads to shortcuts because, there's lots of, you have to compare lots of proposals and it's hard. And so you naturally, as an evaluator, want to look for shortcuts. It's not like people are being mean or bad. It's just natural because it's a lot of work and people are overwhelmed and busy. And then, of course, there's more traditional outputs, right? There's not a whole lot of space for other stuff like motivation, your vision, or other accomplishments or things that you've done that don't quite fit in a traditional CV, but still are important things that you've done with your research career. So how can we avoid shortcuts and potential biases in evaluation? Our theory is you take the quantitative stuff and we have our researchers or applicants fill in an ORC ID, so an open, available, researcher driven, right? So they're the ones that you control your ORC ID and what goes in for all the quantitative stuff. And then the qualitative stuff, we require a 2-page narrative profile, a narrative CV, which asks for, your motivation and vision, your overall career path, including, different stays in different sectors or carrying responsibilities or whatever. So that's all taken into account, and a broader range of contributions. I'm not going to go over the template itself. If you want, you can look on our website. I can put the link in the chat later and you can check out the template. It's all there and open. So we have the template, and the template has guidance inside of it, and it has links to really good sources and other institutions and other funders that also provide guidance on narrative CVs, because there's good stuff out there, and there's no sense in reinventing the wheel or saying, our guidance is better than their guidance. We do also have a workshop, so a training workshop, which we've done now 2 years in a row, and And so we've gotten our applicants together and had them, develop, talk to each other and say, okay, what should go in these areas? So there's this nice mural that we did with these 4 contribution sections. In our achievement section, there's contributions to the generation of new ideas and knowledge, contributions to teams and individuals, the wider research and innovation community, and broader society. And we got the researchers together, not me, not funders, and we said, okay, what would you think fits in these sections? And they drafted something which I thought is really impressive, and we then put it on our website. So you can take a look here, and you can download this resource as well, because share and share alike. But there's lots of other resources as well that are out there. So do a search, or if you know some, share with others. We try our best to kind of put the resources we know about in our CV template. The UKRI has the resume resources library, which another thing we can put in the chat, which has also resources mostly for funders and institutions, but there's some for applicants as well, and evaluators. Okay, so in that training session, we asked people what they thought about narrative CVs and say, okay, what do you think the good aspects are, the benefits of a narrative style CV, and what do you think the challenges are? And so the benefits, people said, this is not for me, this is from applicants, from researchers like you, and mostly early careers as well. It's more inclusive of cultural, institutional, and personal differences. It's a more fair and inclusive assessment. Highlights your research career, and it helps contextualize your achievements. It recognizes the diversity of career paths and researcher competences. It reveals personality and passion, right? So you're not just a list of things. It provides more in-depth insights onto the motivations and goals of a researcher, right? So it paints a more complete picture. And it focuses on the person and their story, which I think is a very nice way to really kind of wrap up why we're doing this, right? Because you're not just your H-index or your publication list, you are a bigger picture person, right? And why you do research and what you do in research is related to that. Okay, but of course, I mean, you can't assume that everything's going to be hunky-dory and fantastic, right? This is change, and there are challenges. So we asked, okay, what are the challenges? Takes more time. This is true. We have a feedback survey, which I'll show you later, and the latest results, which are not yet online, say that, yes, applicants spend more time writing a narrative CV than a traditional one, which makes sense because it's new. You have your traditional CV, you can just copy paste stuff, and this requires reflection and thinking. But that's not necessarily bad. Comparing CVs with each other, yes, I mean, yeah, it's a bit more difficult because you have kind of the narratives, and it's hard to compare narratives more than numbers, but that's a challenge that I think is worthwhile for evaluation. Finding the right balance between narration and concision, right? So how do you know how much to write and what to write? Understanding what the evaluators will judge. Yes, this is true. That context word comes back, right? Because the CV shouldn't be the main bit. So I mean, this is my response, right? And we talked about, but I'm just highlighting what people think, like you. Being precise and focused is hard, similar to the top right bubble. And it's not accepted by everyone, which, yeah, I mean, I showed you earlier that there's more and more funders that are adopting it, but there's we're not all the way there around the world yet. So that's true, but we're getting there. Momentum is building. Okay, so how is it evaluated, right? Because it's not just about writing it, it's about how is it evaluated. Hello, Kat. CV is context for the proposal. There's that word again, right? The quality of the proposal is what's most important. That says what you're going to do or what you promise to do. And the CV allows you to control your story. I heard this from somebody at a meeting I went to, that a traditional CV provides, lets the evaluators fill in the gaps and write the story for you, because it doesn't, add the color and stuff. But when you write a narrative style CV, then you are saying you have control over your story, and you can tell the points that you want to be told. The evaluation is qualitative, right? So it shouldn't be qualitative, and it supports a more nuanced evaluation. And I mean, slower decision making hopefully leads to reduced bias. Dora has done some nice studies on this, so you should check out their resources as well. And then we give guidance to evaluators, right? So it's not that we just say, here, do a narrative CV, have fun. But the evaluation criteria, we adapt, right? So we ask for a broader range of outputs and achievements to be also done in the proposal, or in the science that we fund and the research that we fund. And then we give videos and presentations, which I'll show you an example of in a second. So to summarize, evaluation criteria aren't changing, right? We still want good scientific quality research. It's not like we want people to do everything and be superheroes in teaching and mentors and research and talking at schools and this, that, and the other thing. You have to pick your niche and focus areas, what interests you as a researcher, as a person, and build on that and do your research in that direction. But more space is given to broaden this conversation. And very, very importantly, changing language is changing culture, right? If people talk differently during an evaluation or in a proposal or in a CV, then you will start to see culture change. Because if you think about it, language kind of contributes strongly to how a culture evolves or is. Okay, and of course, having a diverse panel is key, right? Because if you have people that are just against this whole thing evaluating, then it's not going to help. Okay, one of the guidances that we give to our panels is a video that we co-produced with Dora, and it's we show this before every one of our panels, and it's called Balanced, Broad, and Responsible. You can find it on the YouTube, or we have also with a one-pager on our website as well. Links are here, and it's nice. The idea is that it gives 6 kind of concrete things that an evaluator can do to kind of think about a more responsible research assessment, including narrative CVs and the broader thinking, but not just that. And then finally, to kind of tie in, and Sebastian was talking about this before, we've done feedback, right? Because it's important for us to understand what people think of this. We can't just throw it out there. And, we're researchers, right? We collect data, we put a hypothesis out there, we collect data and we analyze, and then we kind of refine our hypothesis or figure out what's going on based on this data. And we did this as well. So we want to understand if we're achieving our goals and to get a temperature check. All of this data and the reports are online on our web for free. You can take a look and use the data yourself if you want. And we have feedback from applicants. So these are people based in Luxembourg working in our research ecosystem, and reviewers. And none of our reviewers come from Luxembourg. So it's kind of an international snapshot. I won't share all the results for time, but I'm happy to share a couple. And if you have more, then please dig into the report, send me an email, happy to discuss this stuff. Okay, so we asked applicants, how satisfied are you? General satisfaction question. And you can see nicely, this is from 2022's report, right? We have 2021 report, 2022 report, and the next one, the data is almost done collecting and we'll put it out next year. 63% of respondents said, yeah, we're happy about this. And, another 30 were like, this is fine. And less than 10%, 7% of applicants were like, no, we don't like this. With 147 people polled, it's not a ton, but it's not bad. It's a decent sample. But I mean, it's relatively positive, which is cool. This made us happy when we saw it, and it's continuing, right? This hasn't changed since 2021. It's actually gotten improved. Compared to a traditional CV, how well do you think that this narrative CV allows for this broader achievements to be demonstrated and valued? Again, quite positive. More negativity here for the applicants. I think it's because of change management, but still, I mean, 60% are positive about it. Over 80% are more or less okay or positive about it. Then we asked the reviewers. There's a bit more, 309. How useful was this in your evaluation? And here, this is really nice, right? 68% of reviewers said, yep, we like this. And another 26 were like, this is fine. It's not any worse than a traditional CV. And less than 7%, were like, no, we don't like this. This is cool because it says, okay, we're doing this new thing and it's scary as an applicant. I don't know how to write this. This takes time. The reviewers are going to hate it. And no, actually, this is okay. We're not doing anything that anyone is super against. And then we asked the reviewers, okay, compared to a traditional one, do you think it gives you a broader view of an applicant's skill and expertise? And again, relatively positive. More negativity here in terms of how it looks. Who knows why? I mean, some of the narrative CV, some people just take their traditional CV and then just add words in between. So they don't really take advantage of the space that they're given to kind of really dive into the why. Why are you doing research, or what have you actually done? What's your achievement, and what have you contributed, and how have you contributed? So instead they just wrote, I wrote this paper, I wrote these many papers and mentored these many people, which is fine. I mean, but the space is there to dig deeper if you want. And then I don't have data on this for this year, but we added a question asking, this says, does the broader view exist? Then we asked, is it important? for this broader view? Does it help with the evaluation? And again, it was quite positive. So not only do reviewers think that the narrative profile gives a broader view of a candidate, of a profile, but they think that it's actually worthwhile to have that view. Those will come in the next report. And then we asked, okay, well, let's talk about time and effort. Compared to traditional CV, how much time did the evaluators take to review? And here you see pretty much a bell curve, right? So it's not more than, it doesn't take more time to evaluate than the traditional CV. And then we asked about effort, and it's the same, right? It's not more effort than the traditional CV. It's about the same. There's some that need more time and effort, some that spend less time and effort, but that's normal, right? It's generally a normal distribution. There's no statistical tests on this, so I'm not going to say it's the word significant because I can't, but it's actually quite interesting indicative evidence. Okay, so that's the data. And this is what we've done so far. And then, of course, naturally, the question is, okay, what comes next? There's still issues that are existing, right? So CVs are unique and individualized. People want examples. People are like, I want an example of an edited CV. Or is there, can you send me an example? Or is there a database of examples? And this we don't want because, there's a debate on this between funders and institutions, because some people think, okay, here's a resource, but I'm against, because I think that a narrative CV is tailored to the person and to their proposal. And it shouldn't just be, we shouldn't try to maximize what works, because what's the CV I need to get the money or to get the grant or the fellowship or the position. That shouldn't be the goal. It should be really, this is me, and this is the me that fits into what I'm applying for. Collaboration, as I showed at the beginning, is a very, very important value. So instead of fostering just copy pasting, and this is an opportunity for us to support collaboration and foster peer-to-peer guidance, letting researchers help each other in this push and moving it forward. And then if we can provide a system where people can connect, it'll help reduce barriers, right? Because some institutions have more resources, and some people have access to more resources, right? Because the institutions have a support structure for research support for writing CVs or maximizing proposals or whatever. And if we can kind of get around that and let everybody have an equal chance, this is actually nice, and it'll level the playing field, right? And supplement all that support that's already out there and that will come. And for people without access or independent researchers. Okay, so what does that mean? What are we going to do? I'm just beginning to show these slides. You're one of the first group of people that has seen it. We're creating something that's called PEP-CV, Peer Exchange Platform for Narrative CVs. The concept is in the next slide, but basically the website should go up in the next week or two. We just got the domain like literally this week, so we've been wanting to promote it and publicize it for a while, but we're not there yet, but soon I hope. And it's a peer exchange platform for the research and innovation sector. It's a true collaboration between funders and researchers, and I'll show you what that means in a second. It supports the community implementation of the narrative style CV, right? It's bottom up, right? It's not this thing that we think that you're doing it this way. We provide guidance and stuff, but it's going to support everything else that's going on in the sector that I've shown you. It focuses on exactly what I've talked about in my previous slides, right? This broader range of stuff that comes in research. It's aligned with the principles of Quora and DORA and all those things that 500 institutions around the world have signed up to. It will be open and free for everybody around the world. It's nothing that is behind a paywall or will require access, because it should be open and in a collaboration tool for everybody. And it should foster a research culture of the values of collaboration, collegiality, diversity, and inclusion. Right. So tying back to those values, which I love values. So I think this is important, that this is clear, that this is what we want to do. What will it look like? Basically, we have to host this platform, we have to sustain this platform, we have to fund this platform because it costs money. And so we have researchers on the left side, right? They will be helping us with the hosting and sustaining. And specifically, the Marie Curie Alumni Association has agreed to host this moving forward in perpetuity until it fails or whatever else happens, which is amazing. And we're really, really, really happy that they're on board and going to do this. And then we're going to hire also a community manager to help run the platform. But we need mentors. people who want to join the platform and guide others and help talk about their experiences and broader range of achievements and stuff. And this is where the MCAA comes in, Eurodoc can come in, Young Academy of Europe, and all the institutions and funders as well. Like, we need to really populate this with mentors, with people who want to help and can help. That's so important, because it will live or die based upon how many people are willing to help. And on the other side, sustaining financially and funding the funders and the institutions. So currently, I haven't shown the who's involved from the funder side, because I'm not 100% sure if I'm allowed to yet. But we have 6 funders from around Europe and the UK who are putting money in the implementation phase. So we've raised enough money to build the platform and run it for a year or so, and that's cool. So it will launch next year, so beginning of next year, and the official launch will be at the Marie Curie Alumni Yearly Event, which will be in March. So it's happening. We're going to build it. We're going to make it happen. And moving forward, the idea is that institutions can help find mentors and support and push the platform and communicate about it, but also maybe put a little bit of money into it, right? Because if there's 500 institutions in Quora, and there's, if we can get 10% of them, 50 institutions, to put €1,000 on the table yearly, that's enough to support the platform, right? And maybe a little bit more to help pay for the community manager and further develop if it launches and becomes successful. So I think we're aiming to have this really true collaboration, to keep it open and free for everybody, an active and nice and supportive and collaborative community, and supported by institutions and funders around the world. That's the concept. That's what we're doing next. And that's all I really have to say. So we have time, plenty of time for questions, comments, crazy ideas. Let's have a nice discussion. Yeah, thanks. Let me stop sharing my screen. There's some stuff in the chat too, I think. So yeah, no questions yet. So do you want to share this? Oh, yeah, sorry.
You go.
No, if you want to share the next part, I'm done talking now. Oh, you're frozen.
It's all good. I was just gonna say thank you so much for the interesting presentation, and yeah, really inspiring. So yeah, let's head into the discussion. Yes.
Anybody have any questions, comments on what they've seen? You can put something in the chat or unmute yourself and just jump in. Yeah, excellent.
I will break the ice. So thanks a lot. I will start saying that I'm a big fan of narrative CVs. I usually use them also because I have a non-linear career path. So what you said about being in control of the story, that's super important, because I have many skills, many focuses, many knowledge in different fields and topics. And so I did that for myself. So I started writing my story, and then the traditional CV came very easily afterwards. So I found it very difficult to list all the things I did, because I couldn't find a red line. I know that I have that, but how to explain that to people that don't know me? Starting from the narrative CV, I chose my keywords, and then everything was really in line. So that's just contribution to the debate. But yeah, I think it's super cool what you're doing, really.
It's a really interesting idea that you're talking about as well, right? That you're using the narrative CV as kind of a template for defining your path through life and your career. But exactly, this is the kind of thing that you could benefit other people with, right? That you could say, this is how I did it, and it worked for me. And maybe it's not the same for you, but at least it's an idea you can run through the exercise to see what happens. Thank you for sharing. Any other questions or comments, or either it was all totally crystal clear or nobody's interested in this at all? Yes, Laura.
I'm going to ask something. Can you talk a little bit about any obstacles you sort of came across as you were implementing your narrative CVs?
Cool. Good question. I think so. Let me talk about a little bit how we did it, right? Because one of the reasons that catalyzed this was our reviewers and panel members telling us, you know, we had no standardized CV format at the FNR, and people were submitting 30 pages of whatever. So you'd have CV like packages which were more than the longer than the proposal, and our reviewers were saying, no, we don't want to read that, like, no. And so we use that as a catalyst to kind of, okay, let's do something different. So standardized 2-page template, it's 2 pages max. Like we did a word count at the beginning, but that was a mess, so we got out away from this. And so and then, yeah, okay, we'll standardize. And the key elements, and this is also where the roadblocks and challenges come in, are around communication, right? Change management and stuff like this. So we made sure that researchers were involved, not maybe in the development of the CV, because that we used what was, oh, cat, get off my computer. Sorry. We used we used what was going on around the world, like for example at SFI, because you had the narrative CV for a bit, and the resume for researchers that was available from the Royal Society, and and we built on that based upon what we did. We did a little bit of a feedback round with specific researchers, but we didn't want to make it too broad because we wanted this to be ours. But once it was ready, it was all about communication, right? So ensuring that everybody is aware of what's coming, has the ability to ask questions and give feedback, right? Because not feedback on we like it or we don't like it, but feedback on this document is not clear because I don't understand this part of the guidance or this part of the template. And to have that kind of refining process, that's super important, because like I said, we launched it, we had like word counts for this section versus the other sections, and the feedback was like, we don't understand these word counts whatsoever, they don't make any sense, please get rid of them. So we got rid of them, and people are much more okay with it. And things like this, right? So I think challenges come, but it's important to like maybe stick to kind of the general thing of what you want to do, but listen to the researchers and listen to the people using it, also the evaluators, right? And this part could be, help, it should be expanded, or this part could be reduced, and stuff like that. Like, but honestly, once we implemented it, it was, with all the communication stuff that I'm discussing and the listening to the researchers for the refinement, it wasn't, we haven't gotten that much negative feedback openly, like in all the discussions. Like we presented it in a list of changes that we've done every year, and we put it next to our open access policy. And there were way more questions and comments around open access and, but I still want to publish in Nature and all that sort of stuff than there was about the narrative CV. It was relatively quiet. So the acceptance was relatively quick, I think, because of the process that we did in the communication.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, of course.
When or if somebody does submit a CV that either has metrics in the CV or they submit a traditional CV, what's your process to deal with that? Or
So,
is there a process?
There is, because when we wanted to make this change, we wanted to make it like ripping off a band-aid, right? No going back. And so very clearly in the template, with the template and guidelines are together. So there's one document that has both in it, and the guidelines state very explicitly, if you submit a traditional CV, your proposal is invalid. What's it called? Ineligible. So it's kicked out. Uh, and it's harsh, but we did not have any issues. If people put H-index or impact factors in the narrative CV or in the proposal, we will write them an email and say, this is not allowed based upon our guidelines. We are going to black this out, and we black it out. We go into the PDF and we just and it goes to the evaluators, but then they see this big black line on there. I mean, there was one proposal where they submitted a table of all the researchers involved, like name, institution, H-index, and we told them, we're like, no. And so we just literally deleted the column in by editing the PDF. We told them, we tell them, right? It's not that we do it without telling them, because it's unfair to do that. But you broke this rule. We don't have that. It's not ineligible, but we will remove this stuff. You got to be harsh.
We redact as well, but we sort of it's in the guidance and on the CV template that it will be redacted. So when we are redacting it, we don't tell them it's been redacted, but they're aware of things will be redacted if it's there prior to expert review.
That probably saves you some time because then you don't have to like write emails and stuff. But
Yeah.
But it's good too, because I mean I like I'm a bit evil on this, but it's nice to kind of send them the email like, hey, we know what you're doing. This is not okay, you know, because then maybe it helps to get that message through. More comments,
Following up on
questions?
that,
Yeah.
so one concern that also we discussed with other colleagues is even if you take out general impact factors, um, that the reviewers are still knowing the journals in the field and are still subconsciously or consciously like looking them up and are still using them for the evaluation, or that this is still influencing. Is there any experience on this or how to handle that?
Yes, so you're 100% correct. And I mean, change will take time, right? Like there's no way that we're going to fix this from one day to the other. But I think there's a couple of points that I made that I will repeat because I think that's what's important. And it's changing the language, is changing the culture. So we have in most of our proposals programs a two-step process. So we send a proposal out for written review, and then we have a panel that comes to the FNR we do virtually or whatever. And the written review, we give them guidance, we tell them what we want, we send them the link to the video, but we can't control them, right? If they send us saying, well, okay, well, you know, this guy published or in high impact journals, and that's great. We don't edit. We can't redact that because that's actual important feedback. We need the feedback from the reviewers, and it's unfair of us to you know edit this. If it's really bad, we can maybe send somebody an email and be like, hey, look, you know, this doesn't align with our values. Can you please rethink this? But what we generally do is that then comes into the panel, and the panel, we show them the video, we sit there and we're allowed to intervene and say, nope, you can't talk about impact factor. Nope, you can't talk about this is a woman and therefore she's less good at research, right? That's not okay, right? So if that stuff comes up in a panel, then we say, no, this cannot be discounted. Obviously, it doesn't change what's going on in their brains, but over time, and the panels, you know, our panels stick with us for a couple of years. They get used to how we do things, and you hear differences in what people talk about in the panels, right? You don't hear as much about yeah, well, this guy or girl, you know, they published in great venues. You hear like, oh, well, you know, it's very clear this person's been doing a great job mentoring their colleagues, you know, or this person did this really cool science communication. Like you start to hear that, and that's what changes the culture. So I think that's it, right? We can't assume that we're going to be able to brainwash everybody and change their mentalities, but we have to make as many ways as possible to kind of push that forward. And also the diverse panel, right, is very important, right? If you have a very homogeneous panel, then you know you'll foster maybe more groupthink or more of these sorts of traditional ways of evaluating than if you have a diverse panel in terms of gender, seniority, location, all that stuff, right? So yeah, please. You don't have to wait. You
Joanna
can just
goes
come in.
first. I already spoke.
There's
Joanna, you
a
can go.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. I'm very curious because I have before participated in a discussion, like a panel discussion on whether we should have narrative CVs or not. And what I found, I think actually, and I wanted to ask if that's your impression as well, is that the people that think most negatively about the narrative CVs are the ones that haven't done them or haven't gone through with them. And then actually the people that have done this are more positive, but I don't know if that's what you also see or that's just this one event.
It's a really interesting question, and I've actually seen both. So I have a lot of like people I meet on the street because Luxembourg is small, and I always talk about narrative CVs because that's my thing. You know, how was it? And they say, you know, at first I hated it, and then I did it, and it was hard, and it took time, but now I love it, and I tell my entire group that they should do it. So that's the one type of person. Those are the more PI level. The juniors mix. Sometimes they say, I don't know what I have to talk about. Like I just, I'm applying for a PhD, or I'm super new in research. I don't know what goes in, right? And that's hard, because it's, in the one hand, okay, but the other hand, they've probably done a bunch of other stuff that is connected. It can help, but they just haven't thought about it yet, and they don't have anybody that can help guide them, which is why peer mentoring is really important. Yeah, so that's the other thing. And then I've seen, so in the feedback survey, we've done a little bit of demographics. So I've seen of who writes what answer, and there are the more established, more experienced researchers that just write everything negative across the board and no constructive feedback, just saying this is horrible, I don't like it. Because they've been successful at the game so far, and why would they want to change? Because that's that then threatens them, which that's also understandable, right? Because they want to continue their group, they want to continue their success. It's not that they're evil, but it's just that they want to keep going, as they know, and we're changing stuff. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thanks. It's a way more complex, I think, image that you paint. But I think, as you mentioned, I think a lot of those kind of problems, the teething problems, so to speak, for a new policy or a new introduced thing, is mentoring and more workshops. So I think the website will help a lot already.
Thanks. Yeah, more communication, more getting people talking, and then just the more we do it, that we'll get more used to it. And if it doesn't work, we're researchers, right? Let's throw it away or get a new hypothesis. Let's follow our own processes. So sorry, you had a question, but Leyden Gudson, did you want to jump in too?
You already answered, but it was about active resistance to the thing. But I can share another piece of my experience. As you were saying, a person just once it happened to me that I was chosen for a position just because I provided a new insight. My perspective was so different from all the others that say, okay, maybe this girl can do something interesting. And that's also why I appreciated the don't copy paste, because sometimes it's just doing things differently that make you successful.
Fully agree. I'll tell a story as well, because another thing that we need to pay attention to is there's other sectors that are doing stuff like this. This is very similar to kind of like a cover letter, like in a normal job. And so one of the jobs I applied to a couple of years ago, it was they had on their website, all the requirements of the job, and then the last thing was must enjoy a good beer. So I sent in my normal CV and a cover letter, and in the cover letter I spent a third of a page. It's one page, right? You have to be really concise with that. I spent like a third of a page, or maybe a little bit more, talking about beer, and I'm American originally, so why American beer is good, and why people that don't understand American beer don't get it, and a little bit about beer. I got a phone call like immediately saying that was the coolest cover letter we've ever read. When can we meet? I didn't get a job. They had nothing for me because I didn't fit any of the other requirements, but foot in the door. So yeah, your story is 100% correct. Like differentiate yourself. Use it as a tool to stick yourself out of the crowd.
Excellent. So thanks for the presentation. It was really, really great. I have a question about you. You mentioned that you use mostly for evaluating projects. So do you have any concerns or remarks regarding using it for evaluating individual researchers for specific positions?
A very good point. So I work for a funder, so it's more we have individual fellowships, so I can speak to that, and I can speak to a little bit of hiring and promotion because I know there's stuff going on in that space in the world. So in terms of our fellowships, we have sort of the PhD fellowships, and there we've kind of replaced the cover letter with a narrative CV. So that's kind of there, which is because the first call we did both of them, and our evaluators were like, "It's the same thing. What are you doing?" So then we just thrown out the cover letter and said, "This is the narrative CV." So, and again, it gives a picture of the person, and what they want to do, and we have the section on vision and motivation, right, which is also really kind of interesting and different. We also have fellowships for more advanced, kind of like group leaders and established researchers. And there we actually don't use the narrative CV per se. So we don't have them give a 2-pager and attach that as an annex. We integrate the questions of the narrative CV into the proposal, so they have more space to talk about it, more space to develop their own vision and personality. And because if it's about the person, 2 pages is maybe not even enough, right? You really want to make sure that if they're starting a group, are they going to be a good mentor and group leader? Are they going to develop teams well? Are they going to contribute to the institution and the greater, ecosystem? So we give them more space to delve into that. And for one of those, the established level fellowships, we actually have a mentee evaluation where we'll contact previous mentees, and we'll ask them, hey, tell us about the mentorship. And then that document anonymously goes to the panel, and that factors into the evaluation. So that's what's going on at the funder level. And institutional level, there's institutions in the UK specifically that are using narrative CVs, starting to pilot those in hiring and promotion. For example, Cambridge has the action research on ARC. It's called ARC, ARRC. You have the action research on research culture, maybe. There's a link, Google it. But the idea, what they're doing is they're hiring postdocs, and they hire some with a narrative CV and some with a traditional CV, and they look at the difference between them in kind of a scientifically organized study, which is cool. And then there's an institution in Luxembourg, a research institution, which has started using our narrative CV template for group leader evaluation. So how the PIs and the group leaders will get internal money moving forward. So they have the quantitative side, which they do through their analytics platform and stuff, and Elsevier Pure and all that stuff. And then they have the PIs write a narrative CV based on our template, and they send that. They're going to haven't done. It's the first year, literally right now, and they're sending it to external evaluators to say, here are 2 things, help us evaluate our group leaders. So it's starting to be used, and it's relatively easily applicable because it's very broad. And then the next step is also teams, right? Because the follow-up question is, how do you evaluate teams with such a thing? And you can relatively easily adapt such a template to, instead of saying, how do you do these things, but how does your team do these things? But the team stuff, I think we need to work on a little bit more, because maybe there's room for improvement and adaptation. Does that answer your question? Cool. Thank you, Sebastian, for the link.
There's also one concern that I heard quite a couple of times, and probably you also have a good reply to that from your experiences now with several generations or several years already that people have done this at your funder, which is a couple of times people are afraid that maybe these narrative CVs will benefit particularly people who are more skilled to write nice stories, have the better writing skills, and that it's in this way less objective, or even more so putting up tremendous biases from non-native speakers, because it's also reality for many of us as mobile researchers, right, that we're adapting to other languages. So what's experiences with this?
We've actually gotten these comments as feedback in our feedback survey. So if you look into the free text comments of the surveys that I showed you, these exact quotes, exactly what you're saying is there. And here are the responses, or the thinking so far. So in terms of storytelling, like benefiting people who can tell a better story, yeah, kind of. Two responses to this. One, a proposal is the same, right? If you write a proposal, it's also a story. You're promising a bunch of stuff that you're going to do and why it's going to be amazing and world changing or whatever. So there's no difference there, right? If you want to get rid of that issue, you need to there's a more fundamental change necessary. So I agree with the problem, but I'm not sure that narrative CV is really kind of the issue there. In terms of English speaking, yes, 100%. But again, you have this issue everywhere, and it's about support. It's about one of the main guidance things that we tell everybody, and this is for narrative CVs or proposals or really anything that you do, also peer-reviewed publications. Give it to somebody else to read. The more eyes that look at it, the more feedback you'll get, the better document it will be. You know, it doesn't matter if you're a native English speaker or not. Even if you have a bunch of people look at it, you'll pick up stuff and it'll improve every time, right? If you write your narrative CV the day before it's due and don't have time to give it to anybody, same as a proposal, right? The quality is probably pretty or lower than it could be. So it's these issues they're not wrong, like they exist, but I don't think they're critical breaking points of the change that we want to make. It's more that these are highlighted, right? You know, we're highlighting those issues because we're doing this change, but then, okay, if we want to highlight those issues, we should do something about the bigger issue. And then the last thing I wanted to point out, because you said that, you know, narrative CVs, you mentioned that they're like less factual. And this is a comment that we hear a lot, and that's just simply not true, right? Because why is something written in a text less factual than something written in a list? You could lie in both ways, right? I mean, how many statistics have been falsified, right? Like how much research has to be redacted just because you know, you did something to the numbers. You can lie in text form, you can lie in tabular form, you can lie in whatever form you want. It's not that it's more fact based, it's more metric based, or it provides shortcuts. That's what, when someone says it's not fact based, what it means is that they can't take the shortcuts they're used to taking. And we want to break that cycle, because the shortcuts lead to increased biases and reduced diversity in what's funded and what's chosen. So that's what we want to break.
Great answer, great perspective. Maybe like the simple things, actually, so simple and obvious things, but like as the positive answer to these kind of concerns, that they're not really need to worry so much about them. But that's really, yeah, I like that. Are there any more questions then? Doesn't seem the case. Maybe then one. Sarah is popping up.
I was just popping up, but I don't want to enter.
Then maybe some crazy stuff, as you were inviting some more like further reaching kind of question. With the narrative CVs, this is something that we are discussing so much in the sort of research sphere. If you look more into the pedagogical sphere, there's been something around for a couple of years that's been demanded, for example, for many professorship positions, that people request you to have a teaching portfolio, which also includes usually a narrative part. So do you have any experiences with this? Any comparison with that? How does this relate? Is there anything?
That's interesting. So the closest thing I could talk about for this, because I don't have experience with exactly what you're talking about, but for if anybody's in the Netherlands, they have the Recognition and Rewards program, which is based upon a position paper called Room for Everybody's Talent. And the whole concept of that is that you have niches, or you have like tracks or profiles, right? That you're not just a researcher, but maybe you're better at teaching, or maybe you're better at patient care if you're, you know, in medical research, or maybe you're better there's a fourth one, I think it's outreach, I'm not 100% sure, or impact or something, and the idea is that, you know, you evaluate your profile based upon where you fit, and instead of having everybody in the university or whatever be a researcher, you need this kind of grouping. And it's actually quite intelligent, right? Because it's true. You know, not everybody can be a great researcher, but you also need people who can teach and take care of patients and communicate with the outside and do technician jobs and data management and you know, even beyond what Recognition Rewards is currently focused on. And so I think what you're describing sounds like, well, okay, if I'm going to fit into this profile, then here's the narrative around why I fit into that profile and better than the others. So I don't have any experience, but I think that the Net Recognition Rewards program is the best example of something that moves in that direction. And I mean, they're on fire. They're moving forward nicely, and the institutions in the Netherlands are really kind of starting to adapt and implement this stuff. It's quite interesting.
Apart from the amazing contents they have, also just the very title is so great and so indicative. No, room for everyone's talent. Yes, just like that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Fully agreed. And I mean, like, even recognition rewards, right? That's the whole point of it, right? Broadening recognition rewards. You can't get around saying those words together. So they nailed it.
Yeah. And if there's no more questions, then thank you so much for the inspiring presentation, for the really nice, lively discussion, and it was great having you with us.
Thank you. And if anything, reach out. Always happy to talk.